Hi, Jessica here. Just a quick note before we begin. This episode came out before Reimagining the Workplace became the ReImagination Café. Same spirit, same heart, just a new name that better reflects how we've evolved. Hello and welcome to the Reimagining the Workplace podcast. I'm Jessica Cherry. When I think about growing up in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio in the 1970s, certain experiences immediately come to mind. Listening to Elton John while picnicking on the lawn at the Blossom Music Center, the annual Strawberry Festival at Fairmount Presbyterian Church, and Friday night pizza with my dad at Mama Santa's in Little Italy, which to this day remains my favorite pizza on the planet. Each of these enduring memories is tied to some place where, if I were to return today, I would likely feel an onslaught of complicated emotions. But I think that the overarching feeling would be one of gratitude for the many joyful moments I've had that, when woven together, form the tapestry of a meaningful life. As adults, while we may lose some of our childlike wonder, I think we become more cognizant of and learn to really cherish those places in our community that provide a respite from the stresses of our busy lives, that fuel us to keep going when things are hard, and that bring us moments of joy, however fleeting those moments may sometimes be. As a longtime resident of Ridgefield, Connecticut, for me, one of those places is the Prospector Theater, which is a movie theater just off Main Street, and lucky for me, within walking distance of my house. The Prospector is known for its gracious hospitality, small and impeccably clean theaters, and decadent gourmet popcorn. While it would be no small feat to get me to leave the comfort of my living room to see a movie at a traditional multiplex, I go to the Prospector as much for the energy, the joy that you feel as soon as you walk in the door, as I do for the movies. Because everyone you encounter, from the ushers to the ticket takers to the actors dressed up as characters from the movie you're about to see, they all just seem really happy to be there. They seem to love their jobs. The likely reason for that is that in addition to being a movie theater, the Prospector has a larger mission, which is to provide competitive, inclusive, and meaningful employment for people with disabilities. 75% of the Prospector Theater's employees, who are called prospects, self-identify as having a disability. Many spent years feeling invisible, unable to find work despite their off-the-charts creativity and talent. But that was before they met the Prospector's founder, and my guest today, Valerie Jensen. With her pink hair and eccentric style, Val is an innovative visionary dedicated to improving the quality of life for people with disabilities. She and her team uncover people's strengths and passions, which they call Sparkle, empowering them to both shine at work and contribute to the Prospector's business. The Prospector is also committed to educating others about people with disabilities through what they call service learning, where they create customized programs for businesses, for schools, programs that build empathy, dismantle stigma, demystify accommodations, and shine a spotlight on the incredible talent that exists within this population, but that is so often unrecognized or overlooked. If you pass by the Prospector Theater at night, there's this beautiful multi-story chandelier called the Prospectolier that shines brightly through the window on Prospect Street. And it was actually constructed of items picked up at flea markets that had been abandoned or discarded. And the piece showcases these items, and it's such a lovely representation of the Prospector Theater, which of course showcases the talents of its employees, seeing beyond their disabilities and recognizing them as the hardworking, creative, resilient individuals they are. Individuals who can make significant positive contributions and maybe even add some sparkle to our communities, to our society, and to our workplaces. It's no wonder that the Prospector Theater has earned the moniker Sparkly Beacon of Hope, and I am so delighted to have its founder, Valerie Jensen, with me today. Val, thank you so much for joining me.
This is a thrill for me. Thank you so much for having me.
And I should mention that as part of this podcast, I had the opportunity to actually go on location to the Prospector Theater and speak with several employees, several prospects, which was such a treat. And we'll make those introductions and share some clips from those conversations a bit later in the episode. But Val, to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what ignited your passion for creating employment opportunities for people with disabilities?
Sure. Well, I was born a twin in 1975, and my parents were very surprised to have these fraternal twin girls. Lovely, lovely surprise. And when my mother had us, she said to the doctor, "What's the chances if I'm going to have twins again?" Doctor said, "One in a zillion. No way is that going to happen." So my mother welcomed twins again in 1979. And this time was way different because my mother had given birth to Rebecca and Hope, both having special needs, Hope having Down syndrome, Rebecca being blind. And the doctors came to my parents and said, "Look, you're going to have enough on your plate with 4-year-old twins and a blind baby. Let us just keep this baby with Down syndrome. She'll be put in an institution, go back to your community, go back to your life. Tell everyone you only had one baby. Nobody will ever question it. Do not look back." And my parents said, "Absolutely not. We are taking both of our babies home."
It's unbelievable that the doctor would say that. That's quite shocking to me.
And it's a common story. There are so many people that I've encountered over the years who have had that. And it was just a common belief at the time that people with disabilities were better off in an institution and locked away from society.
Really heartbreaking. And I have seen your mother talk about some of the challenges of trying to raise Hope together with 3 other young children at that time. And I'm sure it was really, really hard. But I remember she said, "You just keep going. That's all you can do." Now, one of the things that I've heard you talk about when looking back at the years growing up with Hope is how difficult it was for you not to have Hope at the same school with you and your sisters.
Hope was bused to a school far away, and my sisters and I had no idea what Hope's day looked like. Hope wasn't always able to communicate her feelings very well. We didn't know if she was going into a school and being bullied, or we didn't know if she was isolated or how the other kids were to her.
And of course, this was before the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed in 1990. So while today someone like Hope would be able to attend school together with students without disabilities, that was not the case at the time. You wrote a blog about this, and I'll read just a portion of it. You say, referring to Hope, "We grew up in the old days before the law protected her rights. I went to school with my other 2 sisters. We took a big bus for a short ride to school. Hope took a short bus for a big ride to school. I loved school. I had a lot of friends and a lot of opportunities. Hope's school was far away from me. She came home tired at night. No friends came over to play. I was sad and confused. Life wasn't fair." So at what point did the light bulb go off in your head and you realize that it didn't have to be that way, that things could be different?
A turning point in my life was when I was 7 or 8 years old. My family was invited to a Special Olympics picnic, and Hope had been involved in Special Olympics. And for the first time in my life, I saw the joy of being with people with disabilities. I saw people playing all sorts of games, playing tug of war, playing wiffle ball, playing kickball, swimming in the pool, having a great time, dancing, and everybody together, everybody having fun and in celebration. And at that young age, I looked at that and I said, that is what I want. And later on, Special Olympics went a step further, and they created a unified version of Special Olympics, which was people with and without disabilities competing together on the same teams. And that, I believe, is a magical picture. And that is a great model of how employment should be.
So that experience, a very meaningful moment for you, and perhaps one that laid the foundation for the integrated and inclusive workplace you ended up creating so many years later. And just going back to growing up with Hope, and as she got a little bit older, one of the things I've heard you talk about is just how much she wanted to work.
It was Hope's work ethic that helped me to understand why a job is so important to help people with disabilities, because Hope would do anything for a paycheck and would go to her internships and whatnot, which she had through high school, working, washing dishes at Applebee's, cleaning trays at McDonald's. And she would go to those jobs like they were the most important jobs on the whole earth. And her friendships that came out of that, it was amazing relationships that she developed, and self-esteem and responsibility. But again, these were just internships that were part of her high school transition. She needed true employment. She needed a paycheck. She needed to learn job skills, and she needed to work somewhere that would make accommodations.
So, a lot of progress has been made since the time you were growing up with Hope and the time that she was transitioning to adulthood. And today, Hope is gainfully employed at the Prospector Theater, and she has also worked for many years as a lunch lady at the same school that she was unable to attend all those years ago, which is somewhat poetic. But of course, for others, the picture is not as bright. And many people with disabilities who are eager to work face an uphill battle when trying to find a job.
Yes.
What percentage of people with disabilities are unemployed? And how would you describe their prospects for finding work?
Pre-pandemic, it was estimated 80% of working age adults with disabilities were unemployed. That number got higher after the pandemic. It is nearly impossible for an adult with a disability to find a job. And it's not for lack of talent. There's this amazing pool of untapped talent that is in this population.
Right. Everybody's talking about how difficult it is to find workers. And then you walk into the Prospector and you see all of these immensely talented, creative people, many of whom previously struggled to find work, hitting it out of the park, and clearly so grateful to have jobs, to be included, to be part of something.
The gratitude for work, the happiness, the positivity, the dedication that people bring in when they really want a job and have been historically invisible or unemployed or underemployed. And the work, their productivity, their work, what it does for morale, it is outstanding.
And I just want to highlight what's implicit in what you just said, which is that hiring people with disabilities is not just good for people with disabilities, it's good for everyone. So when you hear employers complaining about not being able to find workers, they're out there, and hiring them can be good for business.
Well, you see help wanted, help wanted, help wanted, and you hear other employers grieving about not having a dedicated staff or not being able to hire people. There's a disconnect, big disconnect. We'd like to tell the employer just to take a look inside their own businesses to see what operating procedures can be adapted easily to include more people in the workforce.
And of course, the Prospector Theater is a shining example of what that looks like. So let's talk about the genesis of the Prospector Theater. And my first questions are, why a movie theater and why Ridgefield, Connecticut?
Great questions. When I moved to Ridgefield in 2002, I learned that right across the street from my house was a church. And in the basement of that church, every Thursday night, there were a group of actors with disabilities who got together and put on musicals. And the organization was called Sphere. And that was known as Special People Housing, Education, Recreation, and Enrichment. And this musical theater program was one of the capstones of the project. And I came in to volunteer one day. And then a year later, I was writing and directing all of the musicals, and I was president of the organization. And as these things go, and I did not know how to write or direct musicals. And yet there was a need for it. And so there I was, and I was doing Blues Brothers and all sorts of other fun versions of Peter Pan and Sound of Music, and having a great time writing musical theater and putting on these performances. And I grew the program, and the cast got so large that it became unsafe for us to continue on the stage together because there were steps, there were issues related to the curtain, and we were in the basement of an old church, and you just couldn't put that many people up on stage. And my assistant director and I decided to switch to film. And so we also didn't have any background in film, but we found people along the way and wrote the scripts, wrote storyboards. Romeo and Juliet was our first movie, which went on to win film festivals. And we had a fantastic time, great critical acclaim. And we went on to make two more afterwards, an original pirate adventure called Sparkle Island, and then an adaptation of Bride of Frankenstein. They were fantastic films, and we won many film festivals. But every time I would reach out to any of my actors with disabilities, I'd say, hey, can you film today? Everybody was always available. Anytime I wanted them to do anything, they're always available. I'd say, why are you guys always available? Because they've got no jobs. And so many people had no jobs for so long that they just stopped looking for jobs.
So how were they getting by? How were they surviving financially?
Mostly living with parents, living off of some low Social Security benefits, and living far below the poverty line.
many in very desperate situations.
One of the things I've heard you say is that at a certain point, you had this realization that people with disabilities didn't need more trips to the pond or trips to the zoo. Those things are nice, but what people really needed were jobs.
Absolutely.
So what did you do next?
I started looking for a business idea that would hold enough jobs that would be a wide enough spectrum for the people that I knew. And with disability, there's a gigantic spectrum of what people can do. And I didn't want to build something that would feel like a charity. I didn't want people coming out of sympathy.
I wanted to have a premium product that people in the community would be able to enjoy.
And as I was searching for that, I was at a traffic light right in the middle of Ridgefield. And I looked and I saw the building that I'm in now, the Prospector Theater. And it was an old abandoned movie theater, which had become a bank. The bank had gone out of business and there were demolition signs on it because the library had just purchased it and they were about to demolish the building. And I had a vision at that moment and saw the building as it is now today, sparkly, majestic, and bustling. And I knew that that is what I needed to do.
And I should mention that there is a fantastic documentary about the Prospector Theater. It's called 25 Prospect Street, and you can access it through the Prospector Theater website. And it shows what it took to transform that building into what it is today. Great, great documentary. And of course, the Prospector Theater first opened its doors in November of 2014. So its 10-year anniversary is coming up. So a good time to watch that and see how it all started. Okay, so on the Prospector Theater website, you state your mission as finding people with disabilities competitive, inclusive, and meaningful employment. Can you describe for our listeners what that looks like? And it might be helpful if maybe we tease apart those various elements a bit.
Sure. So competitive employment means that everyone is evaluated. Everyone is held to standards. We're not a charity. People get shocked and they all want to hear about, have you ever had to fire anybody? Yes, we have had to make very difficult choices here. But if somebody's not performing right, or if somebody is causing any kind of a safety hazard, or somebody's not improving or living to the standards, we need to let that person go because we are a competitive workforce and we're not here to be sheltering anyone. We need everyone to be working hard toward the bottom line. But we don't take letting somebody go lightly. One of the things that we stand out for is having personal improvement plans, and having these improvement plans really help. We use all the tools that we can to help people. And then when conflicts arise, we work so hard with the individual to help to change. And 9 times out of 10, we have a positive resolution to that.
One of the things I've heard you talk about is how receptive people with disabilities are to feedback.
One of the most important distinctions between employees I have who have disabilities or self-identify with disabilities or who don't, people who have disabilities are so used to feedback, constant feedback, and there are teachers constantly correcting them, constantly giving them supports that when you correct them or come with an improvement plan with constructive feedback, their response is thank you and are grateful for the feedback. And I think a lot of people who are listening who have many employees, they could see that some of their non-disabled peers don't get as high marks on their report card for accepting feedback. How dare you, or who are you to say,
or ouch, just ouch, right? The first reaction.
Right.
Not that I've ever felt that way.
No, of course not.
So let's talk about representation and inclusion. So first, what is the current percentage of prospects who self-identify as having a disability?
About 75% self-identify with a disability. And that's out of 125 employees.
From an age perspective, what is the range?
So the range that we have, I think probably 16 up to 70 years old.
And you've mentioned to me before that you've actually given some of your older workers their first paychecks.
I've got a special joy in my heart from being able to welcome in older people from the population who have been underemployed, unemployed, just who are invisible in the workforce, people who have never been in the spotlight, who have never had a paycheck, who have never had a community of coworkers who graduated long before the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that is still a complete joy to me to be able to hand somebody their first ever paycheck.
Right.
Just a beautiful, beautiful moment.
I can only imagine. And you have people working here with all different types of disabilities. Is that right?
We have prospects with Down syndrome, with autism, with Williams syndrome, with developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, SMS, epilepsy, others with dyslexia, ADHD, mental disabilities, behavioral disabilities.
And so it's great to have diversity in that. And also for our fellow prospects, we learn how to be more inclusive with every new person who comes in, since there are new and different accommodations that that person might need. And we gain such valuable experience working from that variety of people.
So significant representation among people with disabilities. Can you talk a little bit about integration and inclusion and describe what inclusive employment looks like at the Prospector?
Everyone is working jobs together, hand in hand. We're not a sheltered workshop or something where we just have people with disabilities working in a workroom. Here at the Prospector, we're all wearing the same uniform. We're all wearing the same black vests.
There's nothing to designate on our bodies whether someone does or does not have a disability. Most disabilities are invisible, so you wouldn't see them anyway. But here at the Prospector, you have people with disabilities and people without disabilities taking turns being the teacher, being the student, being the trainer, being the learner.
Right, and that's in contrast to situations I've heard about where people with disabilities are relegated to a separate area by themselves, isolated, or with a supervisor hovering over them in a way that makes them uncomfortable. So I'd like you to describe the wide array of jobs that prospects perform. And first, I have to chime in that one of my favorite things about the movie-going experience at the Prospector, which makes it so unique, is the ushers. The way they greet you, the presentations that they do before the movies start, the gracious hospitality that unfortunately you just don't see that much anymore. So can you tell our listeners about the ushers? And I'm curious, what inspired you to have the ushers play this very significant role?
So I love history. I got a lot of inspiration for what the Prospector was going to look and feel like back from reading about the golden age of moviegoing and interviewing people about what it was like to go to the movies in the 40s and 50s. And everyone would always talk about the ushers and this white glove service, that the ushers open doors and welcome people in and meet and greet the guests. And right away, I knew we're going to have ushers. And our ushers love to meet and greet the audience and to thank the audience for coming. And audiences used to tense up a little bit when they would see the ushers come in because they were expecting a hard sell or to throw around the hat or something. But it's nothing like that whatsoever. It is so heartfelt, welcoming everybody, telling them that they're going to be there for them if they need anything throughout the show. And it is very comforting and refreshing to open up a movie with that. And prospects write their own scripts and go out there with jokes and nods and tributes to whatever is up on the screen. Once a year, we've got a throwback of Jaws. It is so fun to see Jaws up on the big screen. Everybody screams. It is so scary. Our prospector, Joe, is a method actor, and he grows out mutton chops over about 2 months. And he gives the whole USS Indianapolis speech.
And we actually have a clip of Joe doing a portion of that speech. Here's a minute of the USS Indianapolis monologue.
Very first light, Chief. Sharks come cruising. So we formed ourselves into tight groups. You know, it was kind of like old squares in a battle like you see in a calendar, like the Battle of Waterloo. The idea was shark comes to the nearest man. That man, he starts pounding, hollering, screaming. Sometimes the shark would go away. Sometimes he wouldn't go away. Sometimes that shark, he looks right into you, right into your eyes. You know, the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't seem to be living until he bites you, and those black eyes roll over white, and then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. The ocean turns red, in spite of all the pounding, the hollering. They all come in and they rip you to pieces.
He is so good. He totally nailed that.
Where else do you get that?
Nowhere else. So much fun. So in addition to the ushers, the ticket takers, and everyone you encounter when you go to see a movie at the Prospector, prospects perform many other roles. For example, I know there are a host of jobs related to the business operations of the Prospector Theater. Can you tell us about some of the other jobs prospects have? What other functions they perform?
We make all of our own marketing materials. So there's graphic design, there's digital marketing, there's the projection, the projectors, there's the website. There are multiple apps that we have developed to help us with our curriculum, our training. So there's a lot of IT, coding, production, audio. We make all the pre-show content before all of our movies and make videos for YouTube and for our website. Really fun videos. So when you take a video production alone, you've got writers, you have artists, you have actors, you have the editors, lighting. So all of those are jobs. Now we also have all of the maintenance of the building, and we are known for being the cleanest movie theater ever.
I can attest to that myself. Yes, no sticky floors.
Thank you. No sticky floors. And that was such a savior to us after COVID. People were willing to come back to a movie theater, whereas they would feel comfortable being inside anywhere, but they would trust and come to the Prospectors. But we love our clean team. And there's building maintenance, there's landscaping, there's all sorts of facilities and maintenance jobs that come around. Gourmet popcorn. So we have people working in the popcorn kitchen, coming up with the recipes, coming up with the menus, the marketing and selling of the gourmet popcorn. We take our show on the road and go out with our tents to the farmers markets to sell our gourmet popcorn and spread the mission that way. And so that creates a whole ton of jobs. Our Heads Up Cafe is a complete coffee shop. So it's really like we have 30 different businesses working within our umbrella because there's such a huge spectrum of jobs and so many different working parts. This building is a machine and it was designed as such.
That is incredible. So many different jobs. And then you provide an entirely different set of jobs over at Gemstone Farm in Wilton, Connecticut, which I didn't even know about until the day we met to talk about doing this interview. Can you tell us a little bit about Gemstone?
So I've kept it very private because while Prospector is a 501c3 nonprofit, Gemstone is my private residence. And I bought it in 2018 as a land investment, moved there full time in 2019. And it's 160 acres and I'm not a farmer. So I have had to learn everything, but I've just followed the same rules and principles and the just love for learning new things. I didn't know anything about starting up a movie theater either. So it was just following the same principles, just learning everything I could about farming. And so I developed a work program at Gemstone Farm, just like I did here at the Prospector Theater. So people come over and they work at Gemstone. And the timing of it was so miraculous. I moved there in 2019, and then the world got shut down in March of 2020. And so I bought 3 dozen chickens and we became chicken farmers because I needed to make outside jobs. I needed to keep people working as much as possible. Being inside the buildings, that was not okay. But since we're agriculture over at the farm, we're able to plant gardens, learning how to do the chickens, build the chicken coops. And then in 2021, just looking out the window, I realized I have got thousands of maple trees. And so we became producers of maple syrup, which is incredibly labor intensive, which is exactly what I needed and wanted for employment. Was able to hire so many people to come and help us to work on the buckets and collect the sap and chop the firewood and work the evaporator and do bottling and do labeling. And we do wax seals on the top. So many jobs prospects were able to come down to Gemstone Farm to do. It was a saving grace.
Well, and even now, I'd imagine that some people are better suited to working inside and some are better suited to outdoor work. So it's nice to have options, I'm sure. In addition to providing work for people with disabilities, and of course, there's the independence and the pride that comes from earning a paycheck, you also provide a kind of meaningfulness that I think all of us are always looking for, and you call that sparkle. So in doing my research for this conversation, looking at your website, watching a whole lot of videos, and having conversations with many prospects, there were so many references to sparkle. The importance of uncovering people's sparkle and the significant role that plays in creating that energy, that joy you feel whenever you enter the Prospector Theater. Can you define sparkle for our listeners?
Sparkle is passion. Sparkle is something that when you're working, you don't even realize you're working because you love what you're doing so much. And it's what you gravitate toward and absolutely love.
So if someone really loves something, we want to help them paddle with the current.
We want to put the tools in that person's hands so that they can do that job. And it's such a win-win because we've got that motivation, we've got that excitement. And when you're able to help someone to realize what they want to do and love to do, it's a gift for that individual. It's also a gift for yourself, for the feeling that you get from having made that possible for that person. And Sparkle is infused in the business operations of the Prospector Theater. We had a gentleman start with us and he loved rap music and he just wanted to rap all day. And we said, okay, you can rap all day, no problem, as long as your raps are about the Prospector Theater. And they were, and some of our greatest YouTubes and movies are our concessions rap. So it just has to make sense. But since we have such a wide net, we can really very effectively weave Sparkle into whatever it is to help with the business operations and with the mission of the Prospector.
And we actually have an audio clip to share of one of those concession raps. It's a clip featuring Prospect MC Daniel together with the former executive director of the Prospector Theater, who's now a member of the board, Mike or Munchie Santini. And you're going to love this.
Welcome to the Prospector. How can I help? May I suggest one of the candies on our shelf? If you don't like sweets, we have popcorn. It was freshly popped, so it's all warm.
Like, wow, that all sounds dandy. I'll take a Reese's Pieces. They're my favorite candy.
Here are your treats. Would you like a drink?
There are so many choices now. Let me just think.
We have Aquafina, Root Beer, and Pepsi. I'll grab your drink whenever you're ready.
So good.
That concessions rap is one of our anthems. Every single prospect knows that rap. We love it.
And there's a really great backstory here that I want to share, because Munchie had previously been a rapper and had worked for a nonprofit in DC that uses hip hop as a tool for social change. And Val, of course, when you hired Munchie, no surprise, you both agreed that it would make sense for Munchie to put his rap background to good use at the Prospector. And then you had Daniel, who loved rap, but who I understand was very reserved initially, very quiet, and that rapping really helped him to come out of his shell.
He was so quiet that probably for the first 2 months that he worked here, I didn't think he spoke English because I did not hear him say anything, not one word. But it was from Munchie leaning into Daniel's love for rap that they were able to create that rap and many more raps after it. And it brought MC Daniel to life. It was like, that was the magic sauce that MC Daniel needed.
So that ended up being a win for MC Daniel, a win for Munchie, a win for the Prospector, and a win for all of us who get to listen. I just love that story. And music is a big theme at the Prospector. There's a lot of great music in your videos, and you even have an in-house band, which is really, really good. So many prospects finding their sparkle in music and so many other creative endeavors. Actually, Joe, who did the Jaws monologue we heard earlier, he's developed a passion for embroidery and he's really talented at it.
Yes, so talented at it. And the reason he got into the embroidery was because he was so obsessed with Star Wars. Super, super fan of Star Wars. And this was 2015 when Force Awakens was coming out. And he was so into it. And he drew a picture of a Yoda that said, "Oh, may the sparkle be with you."
Yes, of course.
And so I had just purchased this professional embroidery machine, having no idea how to use this thing. So how hard could it be? And it turned out it was really hard, very technical, very difficult. And so I handed it to Joe and said, "Hey, Joe, this Yoda could look great on your vest. You just have to figure out how to use the machine." And he said, "No problem." And for love of that Yoda getting on that vest, that was the sparkle jump that he needed. Then he realized the power that the embroidery machine had. And he's got, I think, 4 vests now. He calls them his NASCAR style vests because he's got patches on them with all different characters from every adventures movie, every action movie that we've had. So we turned it into an embroidery business here at the Prospector. So that is a huge success story. And that was possible through the sparkle of Star Wars. Just work was a byproduct of that.
Those are such great illustrations of connecting the dots between people's passions and the company's business objectives. And that's something that we talk a lot about at Reimagining the Workplace. And just, more broadly, I don't think employers pay enough attention to that. Because leaning into people's strengths and passions, whatever it is that makes them sparkle, it makes so much sense for employers across the board, but so many people, they get the message, stay in your box, stay in your lane, right? And while there's different language people use, there's a lot of research out there showing that people who love what they do and feel a sense of purpose and meaning from their work, if that can somehow be tied to the organization's larger purpose, it's such a win for everybody.
It's a win for everybody. And I think one of the challenges that employers need to break down is the culture of gatekeeping.
Right.
And so we have a very strict no gatekeeping mentality here.
I love that. So do you provide individualized training that is tailored to the special needs of each prospect? Or how do you accommodate each individual? How do you set them up for success?
Great question.
When we were starting out, we got pro bono help from Boston Consulting Group, and they are a world-renowned consulting group, and they came in and really taught us how to be great professionals at what we do and help to set up our organizational structure for success. One of the most important tools that they introduced us to was the standard operating procedure, SOP. And we created SOPs, operating procedures, for every single task that we have here at the Prospector Theater.
So our operating procedures have a universal design.
And when we say that they're universal, it means that it could be somebody who is a non-reader can look at pictures to find out how to do it. Somebody who's an auditory learner gets to listen to the recording of how to do the job. And it would just mean that anybody could come in and look at this and figure out how to do it. So let's take popping popcorn, for example. We have the examples of how to pop popcorn in written form, in picture form, in video form, in cartoon form, everything that you could imagine, showing exactly how to do the task of popping popcorn. And we are always making small improvements, making accommodations. And so the operating procedures are regularly updated with how we are doing the best with how to pop popcorn, or if somebody, let's say they've got a tremor or they're shaking, how they're going to measure it out or what tools they're going to use, or if they're shorter and they might get burned by the element, what kind of protective gloves to wear. Everything is included in these operating procedures. Everybody has access to the information that you need to do the job and do the job well. And then we're also assured that the job is done the same way every single time and that we consistently get that quality product.
Can you give us an example of how you've adapted your operating procedures due to changed circumstances or to accommodate someone's disability?
I can use a COVID example here where when we went remote, people said, oh, wow, you had all that time off. We didn't have any time off because people with disabilities, you need structure and you need repetition. And I knew from the very start that we could not afford the backslip that we would have if we did not continue with structure and repetition and just keep our minds going and keep on working. So we upskilled 120 people on Zoom. And one of the challenges that we had was that we had some people with some tactile and mobility disabilities that they weren't able to mute and unmute themselves. They want to contribute to the conversation, but the mute, unmute key would be a real impediment to that. And so our executive director, Ryan, was able to invent and repurpose a peripheral large button that we gave to people that you're able to easily mute, unmute yourself. And so just creating little workarounds, little tools like that, those go into our repertoire. We're very good at connecting dots when making accommodations and just doing things that make sense. And so often you have to be actually in the situation in which you are doing a task with someone so you could figure out what it is that they will need to succeed in their job. And so that is just paying attention, and it is giving that one-on-one care.
Have you ever encountered a situation where you did not know what accommodation to make, where maybe the tools in your toolbox didn't work this time? And if that happens, what do you do?
If we come to a point where we're not sure of how to make a further accommodation, tying whatever task is to something similar that they do at home, finding out what strategies work for them at home and tying it in, or if we've got access to their caregivers or to their former teachers, wondering what strategies work. And so just adapting, and from the experience that we've had working with over 300 people here since opening, we've collected quite a portfolio of adaptations.
So now that you have this huge repertoire, Have you thought about scaling what you're doing, either by opening more movie theaters or somehow sharing all of this information, all of this knowledge you've amassed over the past 10 years?
Definitely. We're always thinking about scaling. And if I had to look back, especially during shutdown, I had a lot of time for self-reflection and have had to confront a lot of demons, wondering, did I do the right thing by building the Prospector Theater? It's not scalable. And so did I create something that is just such a unicorn that is impossible to replicate? Would it have been better if it never existed and people never even saw the bright side of it? Is it more bad than good? Now, people reach out to us all the time. Even yesterday, Ryan, executive director, was on the phone with someone in Colorado who's got a single screen movie theater in her hometown that she desperately wants to save. And we've had this conversation with people hundreds of times. Do not do what we did. Do not open a movie theater. If you're looking for jobs and meaningful employment for people with disabilities, movie theater is a very difficult business. It's a very expensive business. The infrastructure alone, the buildings and grounds and the contracts you have to come up with studios and the adaptations that you need to make to theaters and buildings, the cost of the technology and whatnot, it makes it price exclusionary. And it breaks people's hearts a little bit because they're like, no, you have a movie theater.
Yeah, it's breaking mine a little bit when you're telling me that.
Yeah, I know. And then they look at me with my pink hair and clown aesthetic, and they're like, well, you did it. But I was under very special circumstances and very generous donors that I was able to underwrite the whole thing. And the generous donations, we were able to build this. But we're hoping that the scalability is through the education, is through the philosophy, is through coming up with more programs and products that are derived from the success of the Prospector Theater. So it's not really meant to be taken literally. It's the philosophy and the principles, the underlying principles that we live by. That is where the gold is.
I really like how you put that. Don't take this literally. In other words, it may not be a movie theater, but whatever the business, you can apply the principles and the philosophy of the Prospector Theater. So that's actually a good segue into talking about the ways in which the Prospector serves as a training facility. And one of the things I've learned since meeting you and your team, and that I've come to realize is such a big part of your dream and the movement you refer to, is education. And your commitment to helping people, young people, business leaders, the community at large, to better understand people with disabilities, what their challenges are, what they're capable of. And one of the ways that you educate people is through your service learning programs, where you create customized prospect-led learning programs for businesses, for schools, really for any group or organization. Can you tell us about that?
Service learning is highly individualized for any group that is coming in. And so we have had everyone from preschoolers to CEOs come in, and we model for people that people with disabilities are people. We are not hiring people with disabilities. We are hiring people. So what we do is we help these leaders, these educators, these professionals to see people with disabilities as people and introduce them to their world.
So tell us about the programs you run for school-age children, the field trips you host.
We welcome in schools from all over Connecticut, Westchester, New York, and schools come in for field trips. And they have the opportunity to actively engage with our prospects, learn about meaningful work, and speak directly and candidly to prospects about their disability. And our prospects are eager to share and to raise awareness for their particular disability. It is such a wonderful learning opportunity for students of all ages who come in and can ask very honest and frank questions. What does it mean to have cerebral palsy? What is it like to have multiple sclerosis? What is SMS? How does that wheelchair keep you alive?
So you're giving them permission to ask those questions that they might not feel comfortable asking in other settings. And what about the programs you create for companies? What are some of the issues you address for employers?
We show the adaptations that we make, small accommodations. Most employers don't even realize that an accommodation that is required by the ADA or an accommodation that an employee might request often costs less than $75. And they think it's going to be a huge thing or a huge strain on their bottom line, or what are we going to do? It's usually $75 or less. You can fix a problem that will open up a doorway for somebody to be able to work. And as we take people on tours and as we're introducing them to people with disabilities so they can have open and honest conversations, we have found they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say when they are face to face with someone with a disability. People are afraid to ask the questions. They don't want to insult people. They don't want to offend people, but they have their questions at top of mind. And so if you could just help to break that ice, then people can start communicating. A lot of people from older generations did not have people with disabilities in their classroom, did not have people with disabilities to play with on the playground, did not have people with disabilities in gym class. And so some people come in and they believe that all people with disabilities are angels, or they have some sort of ingrained pity for people with disabilities. And we work to help break that down. We also create a safe space where there could be an honest and candid conversation about, so what kind of disability do you have? What does that mean? How do people help you? How do people assist you? And that is an open and honest conversation that we can have here. But that's a conversation that cannot happen in HR offices or in the interview process because employers are barred from asking these questions.
You also host a lot of different events and conferences at the Prospector Theater. Can you tell us about the Do Good Business Conference that's coming up in October?
Sure. October 17th, we have the Do Good Business Conference. This is our second business conference, and we began this conference because we've had a gigantic demand for people wanting to learn how we do what we do, wanting to learn the principles of good work, and also to be a network for each other. There is no professional network of people who hire people with disabilities, and that's something that I'm hoping to help to curate, and that's what we're working toward, to making this business community that we could share these best practices and we could speak openly about the successes and the conflicts that we have as employers. And the Do Good Business Conference is a great place where people can come and highlight the successes that they have had at their businesses.
Can you give some examples of the kinds of speakers who come and who participates?
Last year, we had people from Rising Tide Car Wash. They are a car wash from Florida, and it was started by a father with an autistic son who loved to clean cars, and they turned that into a business. We have another woman who came and she began a refurbished doll shop for American Girl dolls. And she found young ladies with autism who have been invisible absent from the workforce, and they meticulously restore American Doll girl clothes and they sell them at their boutique. This year, we've got John from John's Crazy Socks. John's got Down syndrome and he started a crazy socks business because he loves socks. So they're coming to speak about how they formed their company. We've got members of Walgreens coming in. Walgreens has always been a champion in Connecticut, a very large employer of people with disabilities, and they're coming. We have a lot of different companies who are coming in to share practices and to listen to what we're doing and to be there for each other.
So highlighting what works, sharing experiences, and helping to build a professional network for people who hire people with disabilities. And I should mention that there is more information about the Do Good Business Conference and a link for registering on the Prospector Theater website. And on the education side of things, you have some pretty exciting initiatives in the works, right?
Well, this is a little bit of a reveal of something that we are working on, but we have spoken to the Connecticut Department of Education, and we are looking into the feasibility of becoming an institution of higher learning. And we would be, in effect, an academic program and be able to work on educational certificates and educational programming.
Oh, wow. Can you tell us more about that?
We're still in the exploratory phase, but my dream would be that we become this Institute of Higher Education where
we bottle up and package all of the philosophies, the materials that we have been amassing from the whole 10 years. So compiling all of that into a curriculum that will help both business leaders and help educators. And I think that is a huge way that we will be able to scale what we do and able to help and impact a lot more people directly.
That's really exciting and something to keep an eye out for here in Connecticut for sure. So now let's switch gears a little bit, have some fun, and give our listeners a window into the impact meaningful employment has on individual lives. So as I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to visit the Prospector Theater. They have a production facility there, and to have conversations with 4 all-star prospects, Allie Wood, Joe Gelati, Sam Furness, and Rachel Wise, which was so special for me. And also, in addition to meeting Allie, Joe, Sam, and Rachel, I actually got to meet a number of other prospects as well. And wow, Val, what a wonderful team you have over there.
I've got the best employees you could possibly ask for.
So we're going to play some clips from those conversations. And Val, for the benefit of our listeners, can you provide some background information about each prospect before we roll their clip? And why don't we start with Allie?
Allie is an usher.
And Allie communicates through a special app on her iPhone. Allie has got I don't want to say she's got no voice because she has a definite voice, but had vocal cords damaged with meningitis as a child. And so cannot speak words without technology assist. And we were able to help her to get a special customized voice for her that she speaks with through her iPhone, with this beautiful voice that was custom designed for her. And for her first time in her life, she gets to hear herself speak. It's incredible.
It most definitely is. And here is a portion of my conversation with Allie.
Allie, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So first, can you tell me about that beautiful voice of yours?
Thank you. All my life, I've always wished that the voices available for augmentative alternative communication devices for users sound more natural and less robotic. See voices for their users with the natural sound of their own voice. I sent in voice samples of short 1 to 2 words or common sounds people use every day to their recording studio online. Then they found a voice donor who has a similar voice as me, and they meshed my recordings with her voice to make this voice as my voice.
That's incredible. And how long ago was that? When did you get that customized voice?
2.5 years ago from Vocal ID.
And now I know you do a lot of presentations, a lot of public speaking, both here at the Prospector and elsewhere.
Yes, here at the Prospector during service learnings. I talk about the videos that highlight my ADC story and career here. Another thing that I do is teach the students about how I communicate with ADC through a questionnaire type of conversation with me and a fellow prospect. I've also traveled to speak at the Assistive Technology Industry Association Conference and to the Closing the Gap Conference in 2023. I've also done presentations to a few companies virtually as well. During these talks, I talk about my ADC journey more in depth and ways that OC should improve in the future. Lastly, I talk about the Prospector's mission, teaching and training model, what Sparkle means and everything we're doing. And it's important to get the word out that people with disabilities want to work and can work.
So you now serve in a leadership role. You do some managing here at the Prospector. Is that something that you expected that you would be doing when you got the job here?
Shortly after I started working here, I realized that I had a goal to become a leader in the usher department. This was all new to me because up until then I had never wanted to be a leader. I was afraid that because I communicated differently, I wouldn't be taken seriously. It wasn't until I started working at the Prospector that I saw myself capable of taking on this responsibility. The Prospector accepts and supports all the prospects for who we are, and because of this, I felt comfortable in branching out and becoming a leader.
In one of the videos that I watched, your mother talked about it being difficult for you to find a job before you got the job at the Prospector. What would you say to any workplace leaders who may be listening about why it's so important to hire people with disabilities?
To workplace leaders, I would say to not see the disability, but the big potential and talent that I or anybody else has to offer to the team and company. Not only did I prove everyone wrong who didn't take chances on me that I can work and be successful, I worked hard to get to where I am today, and will continue to grow with more potential here at the Prospector and beyond.
I loved having that conversation with Allie. What an extraordinary individual. She's such a role model. And Allie's story is such a great example of the role that technology can play in unlocking someone's full potential. There's really unlimited potential there.
Allie is a real pioneer in the accessible technology space, which is such an important space.
Yeah, and with our aging population, for sure. Okay, let's move on to Joe. And of course, we heard Joe's JAWS monologue earlier. And I should mention that Joe actually did that monologue live for me during our conversation, and I totally put him on the spot. And when I asked him whether there were a few lines he remembered from the monologue that he could recite for me, which I thought was probably a long shot, he confidently replied that that would absolutely not be a problem because he actually has the entire movie memorized, which pretty much blew me away. But Val, Tell us some more about Joe.
Joe is an outstanding usher. He is super knowledgeable. If you're ever in a trivia contest that has anything to do with any movie, you want Joe. He's also our chief embroiderer, and he just has a whole wide range of experiences that just brings his sparkle to the Prospector every single day.
Joe has so many different talents, and during our conversation, I asked him how he's been able to combine so many of his passions at the Prospector Theater. And he talked about the Prospector's unique interview process. Let's listen.
What's great about the Prospector is the interview process is quite different from what you might expect. Any other job would say, we're looking for a person with this many years of experience who can do this, this, and this. But here, one of the main questions they ask is, what do you like to do in your spare time? Mm-hmm. Because in the process of trying to sparkle mine, where we're looking for a person's sparkle, which is their passion, it's what they love to do. For example, someone might say they love to sketch, they love to paint. Someone might say they love video design or web design. And you might think, how could things like that relate to a movie theater? But that's what's great about the Prospector is we find ways to create jobs around these passions.
And I should mention that Joe actually came to our interview dressed as Wolverine. I did the interviews over at the Prospector Theater, and he was there for the opening of Deadpool and Wolverine. And he shared with me how much he loves getting into character for the kids when they come into the Prospector to see a movie. When did you become a character actor?
My third day at work was Halloween of 2014, and that year I came in as Harry Potter. That year I had a whole setup. Val took a picture of me out in front of the front doors, and then that kind of just cemented me as the costume guy. And it's so fun to do because when people come in to watch a movie, they just expect to see that character on the screen.
Right.
They're not expecting to see Spider-Man or Darth Vader or Captain America or one of these characters walking around in the lobby, greeting the guests, waving to the kids, taking pictures with everyone. And it just really brings a smile to the kids' faces. And I love that. I love being a part of that.
And I have no doubt that the kids love it too. Joe brings so much joy to the Prospector, and not just for the kids. His passion for movies and his commitment to his work, he just brings so much joy to everyone who crosses his path. Then there's Rachel, and Rachel is featured pretty prominently in the documentary about the Prospector Theater called 25 Prospect Street. And seeing who she was then and how she has evolved since that time, it's really quite extraordinary.
Rachel is one of my best friends. Rachel has autism. Rachel is the head musician in the band. She plays the double organ. She is our artist in residence at Gemstone Farm. In addition to working in the Gemstone Farm garden, she makes animations, and she and I have published several books together. She is an extraordinary individual.
And like so many prospects, Rachel has done a lot of switch hitting, and we talked about that during our conversation. Here's that clip.
First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me.
You're welcome.
So let's start with the Prospector Theater, where I know you worked at the concession stand, and I understand that you're a really good salesperson.
Yep. I upsell things like snacks,
Yeah.
popcorns, candy, and drinks.
So I actually struggle a bit with sales. Do you have any tips? What makes a successful salesperson?
I say, anything else besides it?
And Val tells me that people can't say no to you.
Nope.
And what about the work you do at Gemstone Farm?
At 2018, the Gemstone Farm opened. And at 2020, I started working at Gemstone Farm when there's coronavirus.
You could be outside, right?
Yeah. I love working outside when it's sunny out. Like weeding, gardening, and some watering gardens.
You're also a professional artist, and some of your art is up on the screen at the Prospector Theater before the movies start, right?
In 2016, I began flipbooking.
Right, you create flipbook animations, which I'm sure is not easy to do.
First one is Kung Fu Panda 4. Po twirling around.
Yeah, I watched your Kung Fu Panda Floor flipbook animation, and also Sonic the Hedgehog, which I assume you did when that movie was playing at the Prospector Theater. So impressive. And do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy doing those flip books and then seeing them up on the movie screen?
Yes, one of my sparkles.
What are your other sparkles?
So I joined the band in the Prospect band.
That's right. I've heard some of the band's music, and it's really good. The songs are very catchy. You play the organ?
Yes, I do play organs.
So you have a lot of different talents.
Of course.
I understand that you have a very special friendship with Val.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your friendship with Val. Why is she so special to you?
She was blonde, but now she dyes her hair pink.
And do you like Val's hair better pink or blonde?
Pink is better.
Pink is better.
Yes.
Most people.
I prefer Valerie's pink hair.
Yeah.
Oh, what a sparkle.
So Val, there's no going back. Pink hair it is. And Val, I know from our conversations that Rachel is someone whose talents went untapped for a long time. Can you tell our listeners what Rachel was doing when you first met her?
When I found Rachel, she was sitting in a restaurant for 4 hours a day by herself at a table as utensils coordinator, rolling napkins. She just rolled napkins. That's all she did. She rolled up the silverware as utensils coordinator. They gave her that lofty title, but sat there absolutely isolated. Didn't have friendships, didn't have stimulation at work. And that takes a toll. That takes a huge toll.
That just sounds so lonely.
So lonely.
And not to take anything away from the fact that she had a job, which of course is so important, but compare that to all of the different things she's doing now and the community that she has now. And I really wish that we could show listeners Rachel's artwork because it's really amazing. So much talent there. And now let's move on to Sam, also a member of the Prospect Band and an incredibly talented bass guitarist. But like so many prospects, he does many other things too.
Sam is an amazing prospect. He is a ball of energy. He both works here at the Prospector and he works at my gemstone farm. He's a musician. He loves to work out. He is just a shining star of a prospect.
So Sam was eager to talk about what meaningful employment means to him. So we started off with that. And then we also talked about his role with the band. And he even brought out his bass guitar. Here's that clip.
And what does meaningful employment mean to you?
It just means that everybody comes here and feels accepted and fits within, and we're all accomplishing tasks in the theater, working as a team that creates meaningful employment to us, because our passions may become our professions here, and we get to sparkle in our own way, and we have a whole team working for our success.
So one of the things I know you love to do is you're a musician, and you're in the Prospect Band. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, we have Jeff, who's our membership guest relationship manager. He's our drummer, and he leads the band. And we have Max, our bassist. We have Mike, our MOD, as guitar, Rachel as organ, and then I'm a bass guitarist who doubles on a few more instruments. And we each get to practice for 1 hour here each week. And we have a few gigs per year, and we advertise it for our events.
And would you be willing to play a little bit for me?
Yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
So Sam is another super talented prospect. So 4 extraordinary individuals putting their unique talents, their sparkle to work every day. Val, those conversations were so much fun for me, truly. So thank you very, very much for giving me the opportunity to do that. And I just have to say that one of the things that really jumped out at me is the community, the sense of belonging, the close-knit family that you've created.
It is a beautiful community. One of the gifts that I get from this whole thing is watching the interpersonal relationships of prospects and watching and seeing how their friendships blossom outside of work, seeing them on social media out celebrating each other's birthdays, going out and doing things. And I know it's cheesy to say we're all like a family, or if any employer says, oh, we're all like a family here, that's a red flag and people should run from it. But it's hard not to say that.
Well, and in your case, it just comes from such an authentic place. So we have covered a lot of ground. So let me recap, and then let's try to tie everything together a bit. So we talked about your experience growing up with hope and how that both ignited your passion for finding meaningful employment for people with disabilities and informed your approach. We talked about the wide spectrum of jobs that prospects perform and the implications well beyond movie theaters. You shared a little bit about your service learning programs and other educational initiatives. And of course, there were my conversations with Allie, Joe, Rachel, and Sam, which highlight not only the vast talent you have here at the Prospector, but also just in general what you can unlock when you tap into people's sparkle. So now let me ask you, what is your message for workplace leaders who are listening, who are perhaps inspired by what you're doing and may want to apply some of it to their workplaces, but aren't sure where to start?
My message to people would be, if it is available to you, to visit the Prospector, to come and to get yourself a glass of wine, get yourself some gourmet popcorn, take a seat, sit on our seating steps right in the lobby on one of the busy nights, and just get inspiration, feel the sparkle, look around at the people who are working, and picture anything in your workforce, whether they are support staff or whether they are in the direct operations of your business. Really start to look at people with disabilities in a new light and think about how they can be included in the workforce. You'll be finding a dedicated, wonderful employee, and it is such a joy. And I would tell people to not be afraid and to look to the Prospector to see the possibility.
Val, we're going to have to start winding down. But before we do, there's something I want to say to you. So I was really excited to do this podcast episode. I wanted to highlight a small business, someone who is making a difference individually or through a nonprofit. And of course, you immediately came to mind. I love movies, I love the Prospector, and I'm a regular customer. And I thought this was going to be a really lovely, inspiring piece about a movie theater. But the more I dug in, the more I educated myself about everything you do. As everyone listening today learned, it's so much more. I mean, it's a wonderful movie theater. It's a wonderful place to walk in the door and be inspired by the joy that the people who work there are clearly experiencing and the pride that they take in their work. But there are so many other things that you're doing. There's so many layers, and you're serving as a true role model for workplaces generally. So you said earlier that sometimes you wonder, did you do the right thing? Because the Prospector is such a unicorn, it's so difficult to replicate. But I hope that in your heart of hearts, you know that what you have done and what you and your team continue to do every day is so extraordinary and so meaningful. And it's been a real honor for me to highlight your work.
Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Sometimes it's been really hard for us to break through the barrier of people believing that we're a movie theater. And on some level, that's what we are. We are a movie theater. And we just want people to come in and sometimes just escape all of their problems and just enjoy the movie and don't think about everything else. That's one part of it. But the other part of it is the part that you just hit on, which is the real meat of it. And it is the essential part. And too many of these stories just don't get told. Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, for taking your deep dive and taking such an interest. It is so validating for me and for us.
It's been such a pleasure. So Val, before I let you go, are there any resources you'd like to share with our listeners? And how can they get in touch with you, learn more about the Prospector, and support your mission?
Please go to our website, prospectortheater.org. We have the whole rainbow of socials, all of them, from TikTok and X and Facebook and Instagram. So contact us anytime. We're a movie theater, so we're open 365 days a year. I'm Valerie.Jensen at prospectortheater.org. We would love to hear from you. And also, just come to a movie. It's a nice way to let off steam. And when you realize the mission and how much of a difference it's made to every single person that you've had a touch point with since you got there, it makes it all the better.
I can attest to that. Well, Val, we're out of time. Thank you again for everything that you do and for having this conversation with me.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of Reimagining the Workplace. I'm Jessica Cherry, and to take us out today, we've got a clip from the Prospect Band's Pink album. Here they are with their hit song, For You and Me. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks so much for listening.
Hey now, the Prospector Theater is the place to be. It's time to celebrate meaningful employment for you and me. We work hard and work together to set our sparkle free. Come support our mission, buy a ticket, and you will see. Hey now, the Prospector Theater is the place to be. Hey now, the Prospector Theater is the place to be. Hey now, the Prospector Theater is the place to be. It's time to celebrate meaningful employment for you and me.